Welcome to Zwift Live and welcome back to the Z Pro Tri June Invitational Series. Today we're in Innsbruck for race number 3, which will see first the women and then the men take on 4 laps of the Innsbruck Ring course. 4 laps means 4 shots of the leg snapper climb, forcing an attack on every lap, no doubt. If you're caught without a feather power-up, you are looking into a world of pain. I'm Matt Lieto, and joining me is Sean Jefferson. How's it going, Sean?
Hey Matt, thanks for having me today, and definitely excited for this Innsbruck Ring course.
Yeah, no doubt it's going to be a painful one. Sean, thoughts on today's course with those multi-lap climbs? Will they suit our lighter riders, or is this still a power riders course?
Yeah, you mentioned it being a painful course. We're turning the intensity today up to 11. This will be a very difficult course for a lot of these riders, but I do believe the smaller, more petite, stronger, really high power riders will take today's win.
There you go. Well, this week we've got the women up first, and we're only moments away from the start. So let's take a quick look to see how they fared in race number 2 of last week. The women took on the Crit City course, having just witnessed how the men had flown around the route. They are off, and we have the entire group together. Unsurprisingly, they decided to play a slightly different and more patient game. Instead of all firing off for their time in the spotlight, the peloton banded together and stayed that way for the majority of the race. A smart move on a course that favors the drafter. They are going for it. Everybody's burning those power-ups. Not even the intermediate sprint could pull them apart, although a small group of women headed up by Lucy Charles Barclay attempted to break away. Lucy Charles Barclay and Teresa Adam have not slowed down at all. It was a hard-fought race right to the end as a massive group of women charged for the finishing line. Aero power-ups galore. Ruth Assel is coming around the corner. In the front is Ruth Assel. Teresa Adam is coming around, with almost the entire top 10 able to take the win, only for Teresa Adam to pip Ruth Assel on the line with Jocelyn McCauley in tow. For someone that doesn't have huge amount of Zwift racing experience, she times this to perfection. In a feat of exquisite racing, Teresa takes home her second win of the series to make it 2 from 2 for the Kiwi. So Sean, it was Teresa Adam making it 2 for 2 in this series so far. Any chance the Kiwi is going to make it 3 out of 3 today?
She's been unbeatable so far, so it wouldn't surprise me if she can and does make it 3 for 3 on this course.
That's awesome. So looking at those highlights and how that kind of race played out, how do you see things going on today's race compared to last week's?
Yeah, last week's was a big pack finish and a big bunch. They all, a bunch of athletes all within 2 to 3 seconds. I think today is going to break up a lot more. We're going to have smaller groups, smaller packs, and it'll be a sprint finish between 5 or 8 athletes instead of a pack of 20.
Okay, good to know. Let's take a look at this week's course and the race format. What's in store specifically for the racers this week, Sean?
Yeah, as you see, we're in Innsbruck. We've got 4 laps of the Innsbruck Ring course. Distance 22 miles total, little bit of a climb. That's the leg snapper each loop. So we'll go over that 4 times with 4 laps. The big thing to look out for is the sprint arch on lap 2. It's going to award 7 points for the first rider across the sprint arch, 5 for the second, 3 for third, 2 and 1 all the way down. And then the majority of the points being awarded at the finish line. So watch for that sprint arch on lap 2. It may separate the race.
Yeah, Sean, and obviously, with this point series, the points are super important. So what have you seen in the GC standings specifically and how it pertains to maybe tactics going into this race today?
I think we'll get a mix of both. Athletes that are really going for those intermediate sprints. We saw Lucy do it at the KOMs in the first race and some of the second sprint points in Crit City. I think we'll see similar today. Someone will go for it in lap 2. But the real points will be awarded at the finish, and we'll see those riders that are saving it for that point really try to take the top spot and really push their places up the GC standings.
Yeah, Sean, and in any race on Zwift, use of power-ups is super, super important. But I would say this week it's almost the most important race. Tell us about what power-ups are going to be the most helpful today.
Yeah, you can see all the power-ups on the screen here. Today's course, on the leg snapper, the lightweight power-up is going to be the most beneficial. That climb is so short, really about a minute long. If you can get 15 seconds of relief of 9.5 kilograms lighter weight during that climb, it'll make a massive difference. The additional one is the Aero helmet. Always want that at the finish, and the double draft does help here on a lot of the flat sections, especially trying to recover off of leg snapper today.
Yeah, I mean, as you said, it looks like a lot of power-ups are going to be helpful. So many different aspects to this course you can use them on. The women are already out on course. Let's jump into the race already happening and see what's going on, Sean. What do you see?
Yeah, so this race starts flat. It's very flat through the town. There'll be a slight 1% grade down. We'll get a little bit of a false flat going over the bridge, but the main animator of today's course is leg snapper, and we're going to see a lot of these athletes settle in, kind of make sure they're all packed together, and really see the fireworks explode once we hit the base of leg snapper.
Yeah, that is definitely a packed up group right there. We see highlighted Flora Duffy. Sean, are you surprised that we haven't really seen her shine yet in this race series? And do you think this is a course where we might be able to see that from her today?
Yeah, she's been a little bit further down the GC standings than we would have thought going into this race series. I know she was battling a little bit of a stomach bug or something the last couple of weeks. So definitely looking for big things from her today. I think this course suits her, the flattish course with a short, high power climb, and then the intermediate sprint point. I could see Flora being very, very successful today, and look for her to be up towards the front on this first climb.
Yeah, and as you say that, she is setting herself up there. Another athlete that I think specifically hasn't really shown us what she's capable of, and maybe today is the day, is Paula Finley, and she's one that has been up there as well. Sean, about how far are we from going up that leg snapper the first time?
We're just about to get into it. It comes in around 5K, so look for them to go around this turn. Let me see where we're at. They'll start climbing. It starts relatively soft, 2 to 3% for the first 100 meters, and then gets fairly steep, around 8% for the majority of the climb. So watch for the fireworks to happen right across the bridge they're just about to come onto.
Well, there you go. You have Angela Nath. She used a ghost power-up to try to hide herself from the field and get a little bit of a head start going into this climb. Melanie Marr jumping across. So these women, Sean, are not wasting any time, being very aggressive. Is it possible that a Nath and a Marr that haven't really seen success in the sprint finishes, maybe they're going to try to get a little group away early?
Yes, I mean, we did this course yesterday with Melanie Moore. She joined us for their course recon, and she knows this climb. She smashed it up the climb yesterday, so she's prepared. She knows exactly how long it is, and we saw they actually made a move before the climb even started to get towards the front and really position herself at the front and lead up this first time up leg snapper.
Yeah, well, there you go. She certainly is doing that right now. Heart rate's mid 170s. She's pushing 7 watts per kilo as she leads. And Sean, this is already broken up. We've got little gaps. We've got about 8 riders down. We've got a second gap where Rachel Clommer, Flora Duffy are actually separated a little bit as well already.
Yeah, the gap's already opening 4 or 5 seconds. I can see at the back end. This is where they just go around the turn. You want to be attached once you start descending. If those gaps are there and you're going down by yourself, you're not gonna be able to close that gap compared to a pack of 8 riders that we see up front here. So this is a significant gap here, and this might stay away. We can see where the gap started opening 5-6 seconds towards the middle to back of the pack already.
Yeah, and it looks like Rachel Clommer and Duffy are just I think maybe they were listening to you and knew that they needed to get on the back of that group. They've just attached going into that climb. And listeners and viewers, you might hear Sean and be like, yeah, they need to be on the back of that group when they go over that climb. But absolutely, they are not getting back on unless they form a large, very strong group to be able to kind of bridge up to front leaders. But right now we got Teresa Adam throwing 4.5 watts per kilo, trying to keep that group together. It's 3.5 seconds to the second group that has Laura Siddall, Nikki Bartlett, Annabelle Luxford, Georgia Taylor Brown, Angela Nath, and MB Kessler.
Yeah, and you imagine that second group is fairly strung out, lined up towards the back trying to chase. This front group is a big blob of riders, and they're getting a lot of draft off each other, a lot of benefit, and that's where those pack dynamics come into play, where a big pack in a blob will definitely pull away much faster than a strung out one rider, one rider, one rider. So look for this group to continue to push the pace, and hopefully these riders in the back can get together. I see there's a group of 3 or 4 of them together already, and close down this gap once this road flattens out.
And Sean, I think it's important to know that they know these athletes are very smart racers. Those athletes chasing know it's now or never. It's not now, maybe we'll settle in and then try to push back and get there. So we see, I was just looking at Nikki Bartlett. She was pushing 8 watts per kilo chasing. They've brought 4 seconds down to just under 2 seconds now with Laura Sedal, Jackie Herring. They know if they do not get back on this group, they have no chance in the top 10, now 1.5 seconds back. So we might see that group of 3 athletes get back on kind of in this lighter section of the course.
Yeah, and the attack was made up leg snapper. We can see some of them are sitting up a little, only 3.9 watts per kilogram at the front, even though that's still high power. It lets off just enough where some of the riders can get back in, and we see Georgia Taylor Brown just being able to pull back into this front group and will make it across for another round.
Yeah, it's tight. She's still working hard to get across there. Sean, 5 watts per kilo as she closes it down, and I think now we've got that chase group a little bit further back. Now 8.5 seconds back. We've got Sky Monch, Lenny Ramsey, and Paula Finley. No doubt those athletes are going to be pushing pretty hard to try to close that gap. But 8 seconds now, if this front group kind of looks over the shoulder and says, you know what, the race separated on the climb, it's going to separate again, we don't need to push it. If they think that, then maybe that group is going to come on. But if these women at the front of this course continue to push, I think it's bye-bye to that group of 3+ chasing from behind.
Yeah, and we're starting to see that second group, the time going the wrong direction for them, up to 10 seconds at this point. So I think we're going to have these distinct groups right now, and we'll at least stay this way for the next lap. But I do see this front group blowing apart, and we see Georgia Taylor Brown here, 181 beats a minute already. She had to make a really strong move on the descent to catch back up. So she's going to need to use this time right now to recover before we do it all again.
Yeah, I think you're right. And Sean, you're well entrenched in what these pro athletes are up to. Tell us a little bit about Georgia Taylor Brown and what she's great at and why she can be very successful on a course like the one today.
Yeah, I mean, Georgia comes from an ITU background, so really strong runner, used to these crit style races, so really hard efforts, really short, powerful efforts. She'll be used to spiking her power really high and then being able to recover. So I think she'll be fine here. It's really a matter of how much can she recover before we go up leg snapper again, and can she maintain and repeat those really hard, high efforts over and over.
Yeah, I mean, that's going to be the challenge on this course for sure, let alone a sprint kind of in the middle of this race too, to throw a wrench in the situation. But definitely a lot of different aspects of this course are going to hurt the women's legs as they're out here on that course. We see Meredith Kessler throwing 3.8 watts per kilo at the front of the course, 162 beats per minute. Sean, that gap to that chasing group that is a little bit larger than originally stated has 14 seconds now. It doesn't seem, though, that like it's, as we say, alarm bells, like they're at 4.5 watts per kilo. If they sit at 4.5 watts per kilo, do you think they have a chance of getting back to this group?
No, not as it currently stands. I think they're going to have to really go above and beyond to try to make up the difference. Great to see Meredith here on screen. She's leading out this pack right now, and made it up and over the leg snapper in contention and got herself back into the pack, and lap 2 will be where some big separations are going to happen.
Yep, there you go. And yeah, she's definitely an experienced racer out on a course in triathlon, but in the Zwift racing, she's been getting more and more experience and seems to be learning each time around. And on the screen, Lucy Charles Barkley, nobody with more experience in Zwift racing than she has, and she is certainly going to be one to watch for the race today.
Of course, Lucy's always been well equipped on Zwift. She races all the time, been across all these courses, and is always kind of the instigator in these races. So expect her to be up in the front pushing the pace a lot of times. This second time up leg snapper is going to be interesting in the fact that we saw those separations in lap 1, but on the second point, really quickly after the descent comes the second sprint point where points will be awarded. So will see, I think, a much stronger and harder chase on the backside of leg snapper all the way through that sprint point. And if you let some daylight on between the wheel in front of you going up the hill, I think it'll be even harder this time around to catch back on. So really stay connected, really stay tight going up that climb today.
Yeah, I think you're right. And I think maybe, the athletes, we know you got to be warmed up, you got to be ready to race hard when the gun goes off here in Zwift racing, but this course especially, I mean, the race could be made on that first lap. That's not often the case in racing. Jackie Herring on screen right now. She's one, as we've always say, has a great setup. She's probably hitting a power up on your companion app right there so she can hang in on that group, and she's doing a great job. Always looks like she's got a big smile on her face, the pain smile, what we call that. Maybe she's just texting her friends and see what she's doing there. But she is one, again, super experienced. And Sean, she knew that when she had a gap over leg snapper the first time, she had to get back on, and she did.
Yeah, great job by her to get back in. And she may be the one dropping all these ride-ons right now. You can see the little thumbs up over the athletes in the pack here. Anybody watching at home can go onto the Zwift companion app right now, follow one of these athletes and give them a ride on during the race. So you see the thumbs up pop down during each event. She could be doing that to all her friends she's riding with right now.
Yeah, that's awesome. Good point. I mean, we all love a power up, and it's a power up and a thumbs up anytime we're on Zwift, but certainly in a race, we definitely can use that extra encouragement. So if you're out there watching, get some thumbs up going, and we're gonna encourage those athletes as we go. Melanie Moore, again, she's one that I think you and I both had as a favorite in this series, and I think it's these courses, the last two race courses are going to be the ones we're going to see Melanie Moore excel. What do you think about that, Sean?
Yeah, the first two races in the series were a little bit more set up for sprinters. Even though the first one in Watopia, the hilly loop, had some climbs that Melanie Moore did really well on. It really came down to the sprint finish. I think today it's going to be a much smaller group for the sprint finish today, and I think she has proven both in the past on hilly routes and in smaller group finishes that she's really strong, and I do believe she's going to be in the top three, if not win this one today.
There you go. Awesome. That's I agree. I think she's gonna show us what she's made of there. So right now on screen we've got this chase group, and this is the one. This is awesome. We've got Paula Finlay in that group. Looks like we've got Kinsey Lane in that group. Sky Monch, Lenny Ramsey, and those athletes are chasing pretty hard right now. I've got them at 20 seconds, Sean, and it was 22 a little bit ago. So it looks like they kind of realize that it's all or nothing right now, and they're trying to chase on 4.5, 5 watts per kilo, where some of the athletes in the front group are just sitting on. You can see them at 3.5 watts per kilo. Do we think we have a chance for this group to get back on? And because leg snapper is so hard, is there an opportunity for them to move into the top 20 when you've got ones and twos that are then getting blown off of this front group?
Oh, for sure. I think I would like to see a little bit more teamwork in that second pack. It seems like there's been one or two riders consistently at the front. I would like to see more riders rotating through and really pushing the pace, especially on this flat section before the next time up leg snapper. There's nothing really to lose here. You need to either catch up or you're going to be stuck in the back for the rest of the race. So really have to go all out there, use it as teamwork. Riders need to come through and really start taking strong pulls and press that effort to try to drop that time before their next climb.
Yeah, no, I think you're right, and I think we're going to have some tired legs going into leg snapper, not only on this lap, but the lap after. I think we're going to see a lot of chasing, and I do think, Sean, there's a high likelihood that this front group of 17 athletes will get split down, and no surprise, who's going to the front to try to push the pace up the leg snapper, Sean?
Yeah, Melanie Moore back to the front. We know her tactic here, I guess. She wants to be near the front at the start of the climb and really push it, really make these other women suffer, open up the gaps and get her closer towards a bunch finish that is less of 18 to 20 women, but closer to 8 to 9 women on a sprint, and I think she likes her chances there.
There you go. Yeah, so not only are they kind of showing us what's going to happen in the rest of the race and obviously setting up for that finish sprint and try to get that win on the stage here today, but Sean, obviously sprint points coming up soon. So what's the tactics if you're like somewhat comfortable in that front group to try to make sure you get it over leg snapper, but then have the energy to try to take that sprint?
Yeah, I mean, the tactics would be position yourself well in the climb, make sure you're not behind someone who ends up getting gapped, get up and over the climb as comfortable as possible. I mean, that's hard to say because it's such a hard climb, but try to be as conservative as possible while staying connected. And the real sprint point is going to come once they make the descent, flatten out. It's only a couple hundred meters, maybe 500 or 600 meters to the actual sprint point. So at that point, it all becomes about positioning, drafting off someone, and then timing your kick at the right time to get across the sprint point in first place, or at least in the top 3 and really gaining some points.
Yeah, absolutely. That's great input. Sean, we've got Sky Monch on the screen. On the left side, we can see her numbers, 300 watts, just over 4.5 watts per kilo. As we go over the cobbles here on the right, you can see her in person. Quite a nice setup she's got there. She looks nice and comfortable there. Bunch of water, make sure she stays cool and hydrated while she's racing. Sky Monch, incredible athlete, very talented in Ironman and triathlon in general. Won a European championship this year. But Sean, it's interesting to me to see how strong some of these cyclists are. And Sky is a very, very strong cyclist. But what seems to favor Zwift racing is that ability to go well over the watts that you would need in a triathlon. Like she can sit 4.5 watts per kilo most of the day, but it seems like when it goes over 6, she's having trouble. And we see the front of the race, things are splitting up again, Sean.
Yeah, and we just saw on screen a lot of these athletes pushing upwards of 8 and 9 watts per kilogram just for this short 1-minute climb, and really having to do that to stay connected. So we see it is strung out, but it looks like a majority of the pack has gotten up and over connected, and Flora Duffy being one of those athletes, 307 watts, 5.5 watts per kilogram. Really strong effort just to stay connected here and stay mid-pack.
Yeah, Sean, and with that kind of watts per kilo that she's pushing right now, and as comfortable as she looks, I've got eyes on her to be able to do well today. She's one that, is great with Xterra racing and has the ability to kind of what I was saying, going up and over and then settling back in. Flora looks fantastic as she's on screen. But Ruth Assel, she's one that is, she was an animator last week, and she's definitely doing that again this week. She had caused a little bit of a split in that front group, and it does look like it's sticking at 13 places back. Jackie Herring, Laura Sedal, Nikki Bartlett, MBK, Georgia Taylor Brown are all just 6 seconds back now. So a little split again going up leg snap.
Yeah, and that's a very similar time gap to what they had over the first time. I believe with this sprint point coming up and the fight for those sprint points, that the pace is going to stay on, and that 5 to 6 second gap is going to go up instead of down, because there's going to be no letting off the pressure once they hit this flat approaching that intermediate sprint point.
No, I think that's a great point. There's going to be no looking at each other or looking over the shoulder to look for a time to settle in. It's going to be full gas into that sprint point, no doubt. And I think it's interesting, Sean, to look at, we have a group of 5 that has gotten dropped off. That starts at 14th place. And then we've got that chase group still at 47 seconds back. So we might see things there. But now we're going in to the sprint, and it's going hard right now. We got Teresa Adam at the front, Melanie Moore behind, Ruth Assel coming through as well. And it looks like it was Melanie Moore over Teresa Adam, but we will get the official. Melanie Moore at the front of that, no doubt that she got that. Let's look. Yes, Melanie Moore, Teresa Adam, Lucy Charles Barkley with 3 points, Resnikov, and Emma Plant. How about that sprint, Sean?
Yeah, and that's kind of what we talked about. Melanie Moore looking to be aggressive on the climb and wanting to sprint with fewer riders, and it kind of played out how she wanted it to, and we'll see if that's a kind of foreshadowing where the finish line is going to be today and exactly what she's looking to accomplish with a smaller group.
Yeah, no, I think that's a great point. Mar, 7 points. Teresa Adam, though, with another 5. I mean, I think GC-wise, she keeps racking up the points. And Lucy Charles Barkley, 3rd place, that's great in a sprint finish like that. But, Sean, she's got some work to do if she wants to try to get this GC by the end of next week.
Yeah, and I think next week the course going up the Alp will favor, Melanie Moore, Resnikov, Lucy Charles. She's got a ton of experience going up the Alp. I'm not sure if Teresa Adams has ever ridden up the Alp. So I do think there's an advantage there, and there is more points for the top 8 next week across the finish line. So 40 points for the win up the Alp next week. It could be she could be really eyeing that stage as where Lucy wants to make the move to jump back up to the top of the leaderboard.
Yeah, no, I think it's going to be interesting to see. But Sean, we have another split in the back with Learmonth, Annabelle Luxford, and Flora Duffy. It looks like two of those athletes, Flora Duffy, and Angela Nath. It looks like a little bit off the back, trying to bridge back to this group.
Yeah, and it does look like they'll get back on here. The actual athletes that got caught out on that second climb with the sprint are Jackie Herring, Nikki Bartlett, Georgia Taylor Brown, and Meredith Kessler. It was a 5-second gap at the top of the climb. Now it's up to 21 seconds, and that kind of intermediate sprint point really kept the gas on and kind of pushed that gap to an insurmountable lead for them, and very difficult to close. And at 22 seconds now, I think it's a pack of 13 right now in the race that's going to go to the finish line.
Yeah, it's go to the finish line, except if maybe Melanie Moore or Ruth Assel will try to animate over again as we see them going through the finish arch with does look like Jocelyn McCauley trying to get a little bit of space between her and the group with a chaser behind of Melanie Moore. So maybe a little bit of action going on here, Sean. What's going on?
Yeah, I don't know what that. I don't know if they were looking at that as an intermediate sprint point, or maybe got confused of where the points were going to come from. But it looks like she sprinted as that was the intermediate sprint point and dragged a few riders with her. But the points have already been awarded, and let's see if this was an attack or she's just going to sit up and was a bit of a mistake there.
Yeah, it looked like with as fast as her watts dropped when she crossed that finish line, she thought that was a sprint point. So Jocelyn McCauley still comfortably at the front of the group. She definitely didn't sacrifice too much there. As a gap does open up, she has to dig a little bit to get up to the wheel of the athlete in front. It looks like that was Rachel Clommer that she has joined. So right now there's Jocelyn McCauley after that hard effort, and she goes straight back to the front, Sean.
Yeah, and it looks like everyone's still back into this group, so it didn't shake anyone off the back yet. Down 8.8 seconds back, so no real gaps opened up there.
Yep.
But yeah, a little bit of a tactical error there, not knowing the course and where the sprint point was. She may have not realized that sprint arch coming off of the second time of leg snapper was the sprint point. And it just all goes to showing, like, you really got to know these courses, know the climbs, know the points, and where the sprints are.
No, absolutely. Hugely important, especially in a series like this where the points have such high value going into the standings at the end of the race. That was a nice little shot of Jocelyn getting a fan adjustment from someone there in her Zwift room. They were cooling her down a little bit after that hard effort. Well-deserved fan for Jocelyn McCauley, who has, honestly, Sean, she has been the biggest surprise as far as I'm concerned with athletes that have really dominated so far to put herself in a podium position.
Yeah, she's been very consistent over the last two races. I mean, expect the same here today. Top 5, top 3 finishes. Looks good for her. She's obviously shown she's got some power in her legs, both times up leg snapper, and then even in that little false sprint she just did where she mistimed the sprint arch. But definitely look for her up towards the finish, and she's been one of the surprises of this series so far.
Yeah, absolutely. And just, thinking about those GC standings, Teresa Adams is at 74 points with Jocelyn McCauley 4 points back at 70, and then Lucy Charles Barkley at 66 points. So the podium only separated by 8 points. So a lot can change, and certainly with that sprint already will have changed to this point. But on screen, we've got that chase group that is now 30 seconds back, Sean, still working well together. It doesn't look like they're necessarily putting enough effort in to try to bridge back up. And Sean, tell us a little bit about how in Zwift, a group of 5 versus a group of 12 is just kind of at a disadvantage.
Yeah, I mean, it's any time you have just a bigger bunch, it really favors that bunch. You get more draft per person, per pack. So if there's a group of 15, there's 15 drafts, triangles coming off the back of a rider. So there's more space for a rider to always be in a draft. If it's 5 riders and it's strung out, you may get 2 or 3 of those riders towards the back of that pack, not getting as much draft as a big group like we see on the left here with Melanie Moore in the front. A lot of those riders are just sitting in the draft a lot nicer. They're constantly in a good draft position where the smaller groups just don't have that advantage.
Yeah, there you go. That's a great explanation, and it is a challenge. And it's not that they can't get back, but they're going to have to work harder, much harder than that group in the front to be able to bring that gap back. As we see that split, looks like 31 seconds at this point, Sean, and then a further 40 seconds back to our third group on the road with Amelia Rose Watkinson, Kinsey Lane, and Sky Monch putting the effort in on the front of that group.
Yeah, I mean, I think even to just maintain this 30-second gap, you'd like to see a 4.5, 4.8 watts per kilogram for sustained effort and constant rotation from these riders. We're just not seeing that. We're seeing a lot of 4s and 3.8s to kind of just maintain and slowly lose time. But I think they're kind of reserved to knowing they're not going to catch this front pack and going to be racing between packs now. So each rider will be looking to see how they can maximize their position within the pack, especially towards the finish.
Yeah, that's awesome. Sweet. So we've got two groups working well together, with the group on the front on the left side with Melanie Moore in there, with Jocelyn McCauley, Teresa Adam, Rachel Clommer, Lucy Charles Barclay, and a bunch of other super talented athletes. If you're joining us now, the race has split apart. We've got 14K to go. The leg snapper has lived up to its name. They're about to hit it again here, and it has definitely blown this race apart. We've got three groups plus spread across the road, with a lead group of about 11, 12 athletes, a group of 5 or 6 chasing, and then a larger group chasing behind that at 1 minute and 10 seconds. So I think there's going to be even more carnage at this time around, Sean.
Yeah, I mean, every time up leg snapper's hard. So if you get to a point where you barely made it over the first two, the third time up could be the time your legs actually snap. You can't make it up. You can't hold those gaps. And I think there's going to be an athlete or two every time we go up that's going to feel that pain and not be able to maintain the wheel in front of them and lose the pack.
Yeah, I think a really good point. We've got athletes there using the double draft as they kind of try to recover a little bit going into leg snapper. We see Rachel Clommer right on the back of that front group. She's just kind of hiding out right now. Rachel Clommer, super talented athlete. Sean, tell us a little bit about her experience in triathlon racing and how we expect to see her do in the next 2 races.
Yeah, she's an ITU specialist. I presume this would be a good course for her, relatively flat with just these short, sharp climbs. And again, the last race of this series as well, a prolonged climb, 45 to 50 minutes of just straight climbing will be a course that will suit her as well. A little bit on the lighter side, watts per kilogram would be a little higher on some of those climbs. So Look for her to be successful here and really try to move up in these next 2 races up the GC standing.
Yeah, no, I think she has the ability to do that. I've seen her have some, she's a little underrated because she's so good in ITU often, and maybe it's just hanging around the long course athletes too much, is that you always assume maybe they're not as strong as the bike. They're great runners, but I've seen her do some non-drafting races, and she can ride a bike. So if she's able to stay over the top of leg snapper with these other athletes, I think she does have a great shot. But right now we got Teresa Adam at the front of the group where she's comfortable with 2 for 2 so far. Annabelle Luxford on her wheel, Melanie Moore there as well. Resnikov also, Sean, is an athlete that we expect to do well, but haven't really seen her excel in those first 2 courses. What do you think her chances are here today?
No, I think she's going to do well here. She's proven to be strong on the hills. Every time we've raced on a hilly course, she's done really well. So she's also won or been second on Crit City. So she's got the sprinting power when it comes to a flat sprint too. But no one's been able to beat Teresa Adams so far. So as long as she's still hanging around and they can't get rid of her, kind of got to go with Teresa Adams to take it and go 3 for 3 so far.
Sean, some big watts being thrown off the back of this group, actually. 1.3 seconds behind, getting stretched out, is Annabelle Luxford, and at 9 watts per kilo right now, Lucy Charles Barclay doing everything she can, Sean, to get back on the back end of this group with Flora Duffy on her shoulders. So they are really trying to get up over.
Yeah, and that's what you have to do. You see the gap starting to open towards the top half of that climb, and you have to put all the power you can just to make sure you're attached. You don't want to make that right-hand turn, go down the hill, and lose the pack. So it looks like they did a really good job there, being able to save some of their power for that final 100 meters, get back attached, get reattached, and then cruise down the descent with the pack.
No, that was a brilliant example of those athletes just knowing the course so well and knowing that, yes, the climb is important and putting out those big watts going up and through that climb are important, but the most important part is making darn sure that you are on the back of that group. And if you've got a second gap as it gets into that minus 8%, you're gone. And they really put that effort in. It's almost a race finished move. They've got to go all in at that point.
Yeah, and like those draft effects still work on the descent. So if you're an athlete by yourself going downhill, you're taking all the win by yourself, whereas all these other athletes are sitting in a pack, and if somebody's pressing hard off the front, they're not having to work to even stay connected. So it makes it so much harder when those daylight opens and you start losing the pack.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And we saw Flora Duffy take a turn there through the front after getting back on that group and getting a little recovery, being in the blob as they descended down. Right now we see Lucy Charles Barkley, and I think she's looking forward. Lucy Charles Barkley, she's obviously very, very talented. She's been on a couple 3 World Championship podiums, and she's one that probably isn't going to sleep after these races not winning very happy. I think she's going to want, regardless of the points, I think she's going to want to win at the end of the tally board at the end of this race.
Yeah, super competitive racer, Red Bull athlete. So if she's fueling with Red Bull at 7 p.m. at night in the UK, it will be definitely hard to sleep. So she won't want to do that without a win. So I can imagine how frustrating it would be to pull up 3rd, 4th, 5th after you've given that effort, and then you can't get a night of sleep. So look for her to do really well here. I mean, she's positioning herself well. She knows the course. She's always in the top 3. So I think her and an athlete like Lionel always looking to get a win and super frustrated when it doesn't happen.
Yeah, great point, Sean. It's probably a little bit more to do with the caffeine than the regret. But yeah, she's definitely going to have a hard time sleeping regardless tonight. So there we go. We've got that front group coming across. And Sean, we've had questions, often on our feeds on, we see all these different bikes and all these different wheels on course. Is that going to make a difference as to what bike these athletes have, maybe via their sponsor, as to how they're going to be able to compete in our race series?
Normally, when you're in the Zwift world, all those bikes, wheels, helmets, all make a difference with CDA, weight, and performance. But today, we neutralize all the bikes, we neutralize all the equipment, so everybody's got an equal opportunity to perform. We don't want to hamstring or slow anyone down because they don't have the Tron bike, for example, and they're on their sponsor's bike. So we keep that all neutralized. Everyone's got the same opportunity to ride the same equipment here in the Z Pro Race Series.
Yeah, awesome. Everybody's on an equal playing field right now. Emma Pallant, Sean, I don't think I've seen this before, getting a little bit of encouragement by having a friend or significant other riding with her, kind of feeling that pain in the same room. Do you think that's a new tactic for her?
I don't know. It seems like it could heat the room up a little more, having somebody else sweating right next to you. But maybe she just likes the company and likes to feel like she's in the hurt locker with somebody else.
Yeah, no, that's interesting. I was thinking the same thing with the heat, but I kind of don't think he's going that hard. I think he's got the long sleeve jersey on, so I think she's okay. The room is plenty cool. But Emma Pallant, earlier in the race series, before we got to the invitational aspect of it in June, Emma Pallant was so good on these climbing courses, and she really was an instigator anytime we went up a steep climb. So definitely looking for her to shine when it counts, kind of here on this last lap going into the leg snapper. Looking forward to seeing her shine. And again, next week's course is going to suit her quite well.
Yeah, when we raced earlier this year, before we started this June Invitational, she was really strong up Box Hill. So you look towards a race like next week up the Alp, you presume she's going to be in that front group for the majority of the climb. Same with, like a Melanie Moore or Reznikov or Lucy Charles. They all have been proven themselves already through all these races that they like to climb, and they're kind of waiting for that final series race up the Alp.
Yep, there you go. And we just got word that athlete on screen with Emma Pallant is none other than Jared Brown, who's actually racing here in a couple minutes, Sean. My advice, Jared, if you're watching, take that long sleeve jersey off. Maybe cool down a little bit. You want to make sure you don't let that core temperature get too hard, but definitely want to make sure you're warmed up for the race. But on screen right now is Jess Learmonth. Sean, not one we've necessarily seen excel to what we've expected in the race series so far, but I think there's still lots to come from Jess. Tell us a little bit about this athlete.
Yeah, I mean, Jess is a uber swimmer, uber biker in the ITU circuit. She's always at the front of the race, always pushing the pace. So we expect to see her towards the front all the time. She's comfortable there. She's comfortable being kind of an instigator and an aggressive rider. So we see her nicely tucked in towards the front, doing some of the work here, swapping off turns with Lucy Charles, just keeping the pace honest and high while hoping that these other riders behind her don't settle in too much, get too much of a rest, and can just smash those sprints or the next time up leg snapper.
Yeah, there you go. She seems like she's managing quite well, and definitely, as you said, an athlete that has the talent and the experience to be able to do a great job on a course like this one today. Sean, we got a little bit of chatter from people looking in on the race course, and it looks like that chase group at 51 seconds with Laura Siddall, MBK, Jackie Herring, Georgia Taylor Brown, and Nikki Bartlett. Nikki is asking everybody to take 30-second pulse. Everybody take their turn at the front, and we'll see if we can bring back this gap. But right now it's at 52 seconds, and what is interesting to me, Sean, is that it stayed at 40 seconds to the group behind them. So they are definitely riding well and holding strong. I think it's just a numbers game. They can't fight that group of 12 up front.
Yeah, and it's awesome to see that there is the ability to communicate in game using the Zwift companion app, and I would have liked her to or start that conversation when the gap was around 20 seconds and see if they could maintain or pull that back. Now at 50 seconds, that's a little too late, but still maintain that gap. Try to stay away from the group behind them, because they will be racing to try to improve their position too and close down on that gap of Bartlett, Siddall, Georgia Taylor Brown, Herring, and Kessler.
Yeah, there we go. This is an awesome shot looking at that chase group, and you can tell they're taking organized pulls. It looks like a perfect echelon on the right-hand side of the screen. Nikki Bartlett, maybe she was just egging them on so she could sit on a little bit longer as she's sitting on the back. A kid, of course. Nikki's putting in a ton of work in that chase group, but cool to see that group working so well together. But the group that is also working well together but is over double the size is this lead group on the left side with Emma Plant, Teresa Adam, Flora Duffy, Angela Nath, Annabelle Luxford, Ruth Assel, Lucy Charles Barkley, Rachel Clommer, Jocelyn McCauley, and Antonina Reznikov.
Yeah, we do see that group on the right working well as Nikki Bartlett goes back to the front, pushing 367 watts. So definitely taking some strong pulls, trying to close down or at least maintain that gap, and then keep that gap behind them going in the wrong direction for riders like Sky Munch, Lindsay Kane, and Lenny Ramsey. Up to 133 behind the leaders here, and around 42 seconds behind this second chase group. So definitely doing the work, maintaining their position, and trying to just ride strong to the finish and stay within that top 20.
Yeah, and I think, looking at it, they're staying steady. And as you're talking, that gap actually went down a few seconds. Sean, I think is now not the time for that front group on the left. We're going to see people maybe, quote unquote, skipping a turn, maybe trying to get a little bit of recovery. I mean, this is a pretty important part of the race going into this final climb, correct?
It is. I think that front group is comfortable enough with a 49-second gap, especially with the climb coming up. They're going to be way more focused on getting up and over the climb instead of the gap behind them right now. They know if they just smash that last time up leg snapper, stay connected, that group behind them will likely not catch up anyway. So I think they're fairly comfortable here, missing a couple turns, really saving their legs and saving it all for the final attempt on leg snapper.
Yeah, there you go. I think they are saving it. They've got a lot more work to do. They've done a lot of work so far here today, but certainly a lot more coming up. And Sean, as you said, next week is going to be the real kind of cherry on the top of this race series with a little jaunt up the Alpe de Zwift. And I think an athlete on screen like Flora Duffy has a great chance, great climber, but extra points to the first 8 to the summit on that one. So a lot is going to change next week. So if you're around, make sure you join us in Watopia for the last stage of the Z Pro Tri June Invitational. And it is going to be a painful one. I'm looking forward to those rider cams next week, Sean.
Yeah, if we turn the intensity level to 11 today, I'm going to say it's going to go up to 15 next week. It is a really long climb. If you've not done the Alpe, it's very hard, very long, and just is unrelenting. So it'll be awesome to see these athletes finally get a crack at the Alpe and watch for the climbers, the ones who love getting into the mountains, to excel.
Yeah, there's no doubt that dial's going to be broken after next week for sure. And Sean, that chase group's still working really well together, 48 seconds back, but we're probably going to stop referring to them because I think the damage is done right now. We're going to focus on these 12 athletes left that are going to be fighting up this last time up the leg snapper, but then down into a pretty hard finish. I mean, Sean, how hard is it to do the effort that you need to, and certainly there's going to be attacks going up leg snapper the last time, to then make sure the group is together and then load up for another sprint.
Yeah, it's going to be very painful. You have to go all out in really short succession. So you're going all out up leg snapper, getting to the top, making sure you're connected. If a gap does open, then you got to close it down on the descent before we hit the flat. All of that really hard work leads you into the final 2.5 to 3K of racing. So then you got to recover as much as possible and then ramp back up for that final sprint. Very hard racing, very hard finish, and it's going to be very painful. It'll be nice to see some of the pain faces on these athletes just to let us know how hard they're working during this final 2 to 3K.
Oh, they're going to let us know for sure. And Sean, so I think that's a great point. It is that hard effort, that recovery, and then full on again. Is there a type of athlete that you think this favors? And maybe we'll say ITU, but at this point it seems like it's just Teresa Adam. But is there a specific type of athlete you think this specific next 4K favors?
I mean, someone like Melanie Moore did a great job on the last time up. It was, she put the really high power up on the climb, but then was able to recover just enough to take the sprint point. She knew where it was, she timed it perfectly, and we see them deploying most of their, or if not all of their power-ups right now up the climb. So we're definitely into the meat of this climb, and we saw Melanie Moore at the front, Jocelyn McCauley still pushing the pace with Emma Pollan.
No, it's breaking apart, Sean. We got the 6 athletes that have separated a little bit of a group behind. That's got Rachel Clommer and Lucy Charles Barkley on the back foot again, Sean. She's a second and a half behind, and obviously, there's ability to close it, Sean, but are you surprised seeing her continuing to get a little gapped off as we get near the top of this leg snapper climb?
I mean, we talked about it earlier. The many times you go up, you can go up the first time, the second time, and it's fine. The third time, you just cannot hold the power anymore, and it looks like 1 second, 1.5 seconds, 2 seconds back. It looks like it's strung out for sure, but I think they're going to be able to come back here, barring anything happening.
Yeah, huge efforts going in. Lucy Charles Barkley gets back on, still at 1.5 seconds back is Angela Nath. She's trying so hard, 6.5 watts per kilo. She's still digging, trying to bridge up to this group, but it seems like it's continuing. That gap is continuing to extend. Annabelle Luxford has gotten dropped off of this group, as has Jess Learmoth. I think important to say who's made the group is Rachel Clommer, Flora Duffy, McCauley, Moore, Ruth Assel, Teresa Adam, Resnikoff, Palant, and again, Lucy Charles Barkley on screen, able to hang in that group. And again, Sean, Angela Nath, 2.5 seconds back. That's going to be tough. She's at 7 watts per kilo trying to bridge this gap.
Yeah, and we could see her. She's gone into the super tuck here to try to save some energy. She's going to have to come out and really push the power down to get back into this pack. As it starts to flatten out here, we have 2.5K to go. So she's in a really tough position here because she's now got to use a ton of power just to try to catch up. And then it goes straight into a sprint again. So it's going to be very hard for her to come over the top or even get back to this group. So look for the top, top 10 to be solidified. She's sitting in 10th, Flora Duffy up in 9th, and it's going to come from those top 9 riders. Kind of what we predicted, a smaller group of 8 to 9 riders really fighting it out for the sprint here at the finish.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think they definitely put a lot of effort in to try to break that group up, and they certainly got rid of a few very, very strong athletes, including Learmonth, Luxford, and Nath. So now, as you said, Sean, it's 9 athletes with Ruth Assel, who was the athlete that really, really showed a lot last week and was super aggressive, kind of making things happen, obviously, with a great performance in that race last week. She takes a hard pull, but she looks comfortable. She knows 1.9K to go. She's got a lot of work left, but she tactically has a fantastic ability to do well in these Zwift Pro Invitational Series races. And Ruth Assel at the front of this group. We've got Rachel Clommer and Lucy Charles Barkley in there as well. Sean, with the talent that we have here, 9 athletes left. Give us a few seconds on what do you think is going to happen with this final 1.5K to go.
It's really going to come down to positioning here. Who's going to lead it out, who's going to jump early, making sure you're aware of it, using their draft to really launch your attack. We've seen Teresa Adams be unbeatable here so far. She's back to the flat section, 1.3K to go. She's won the last few races with a sprint finish. Can somebody like Melanie Moore time this perfectly? And it looks like Lucy may be going to the front to push this already.
Yeah, Lucy takes a quick little pull at 7 watts per kilo to make sure she's at the front of the group, and they are coming underneath the Flamme Rouge. Sean, that means 1K to go. Have you quick, one word pick. Who's going to win?
Melanie Moore. I like what she did in the intermediate sprint, and I'd like to see her replicate that here at the finish line.
That's awesome. Great pick. Let's see, but right now we've got Jocelyn McCauley taking her turn at the front, and Teresa Adam is just kind of hiding out as she has done so far this race, not so much the prior 2 races. Flora Duffy is in this group comfortably. They're all sitting around looking at each other. 750 meters to go. They're all around 4 watts per kilo. We got 5 watts per kilo coming out of Rachel Clommer. She's just moving her position in this group. She's watched these races and obviously raced them the last few weeks. She knows that positioning is hugely important. With 575 meters to go, we've got Lucy Charles Barclay at the front, 2.9 watts per kilo. She's setting herself back in the middle of the group. Ruth Assel goes to the front, as well as Rachel Clommer with 430 meters to go. We have Rachel Clommer at the front. Teresa Adams puts her nose in the wind just for a second. Reznikov goes out front. It looks like they're all trying to stay away from the front of the race as much as possible. Couple hard pedal strokes from none other than Ruth Assel, 10.5 watts per kilo at 12.5 now. She's got a small gap over Melanie Moore at 9.8 watts per kilo, 175 meters to go. It's Ruth Assel, 11.2 watts per kilo. She's at the front. The group is coming in strong, and a rider coming around the corner right at the end. Looks like Teresa Adam and Ruth Assel. It's going to be a photo finish. Reznikov in there as well. But wow, Sean, that Ruth Assel again goes early, but that's her tactic, and she holds off. But I don't know. I don't know who got it, Sean. I do not know.
It was so close. It looked like she was going to stay away, and it looks like it's Teresa Adams over the line first. Reznikov came in just behind her, and Ruth finishing in third. What a move from Ruth. Really strong effort with 200 meters to go. Just could not hang on. I mean, look at those time splits. 0.03 of a second for Teresa Adams to Reznikov, and then back to 0.1 seconds for Ruth Assel. Melanie Moore finishing into 4th. Flora Duffy, great showing for her to come back on a course we thought she would do well on to finish 5th. Emma Pollan in 6th, again strong over the hills and was able to hold on nicely there. Jocelyn McCauley into 7th. Lucy Charles 8th, maybe missing just a little bit of that high-end power. It seemed like she was working a little harder than we normally would see on the leg snapper and coming in 8th.
Yeah, no, that was just a little bit mistimed, and as you said, it did look like she was struggling a little bit, but let's give credit where credit's due. That's 3 for 3 for Teresa Adam. Unbelievable, and the timing is impeccable, and I think Ruth Assel is showing something to every sprinter out there. You know, Teresa Adam obviously is super, super talented, and she's trying to beat her by surprising her. I don't know, Sean, I'm thinking about coming up with a t-shirt for sprint athletes that say, what would Ruth do? Because she is absolutely crushing those sprints. And, this is a very, very new pro triathlete, and she's, messing around and mixing it up with the best in the world. And she's leading out, Teresa Adam and Tonina Reznikov for the podium. Amazing performance to that podium finish.
Yeah, Teresa Adam again. I mean, tactically, she's just been perfect. She stuck really nicely over every climb. Could not be shaken on leg snapper. And again, in the final 200 to 300 meters, she's just been flawless. She's been perfect, and she's shown it every time. Just edging her wheel out in the front in the last. I mean, she may have led the race for a total of 10 meters the entire time. But does it when it counts and is taking the win in the last 3 events. Super impressive.
Yeah, absolutely. And look at those points. Gets another 35 in the bank. So fantastic performance by Teresa Adam. She's certainly the class athlete of this series so far. That's 3 from 3, and no doubt she's going to have a large lead in the points series. That was amazing race by the women out there today. And let's see how it happened.
Yeah, big jump by Ruth with looks like 200 meters to go, and had a nice gap, but just could not hang on as Teresa Adams just came by right at the line to take it. I mean, it's so close. From all the cameras, it's hard to tell, and then you just see it right at the line, the dip for the line by Teresa Adams that takes it.
Yeah, that was, as you could tell with my call of that, Sean, I was shocked. I couldn't believe what I saw, what was happening, and to see Ruth get pipped at the line again is brutal, but amazing to see her get that result and that amazing performance. So Teresa, Adam, great timing on that. Reznikov is putting herself up in the series standings a little bit more to be able to pay attention to the GC at the end and focus on that big race next week. But we have the men's race coming up now. The women, it could not have been more dramatic. Split field all the way through that race, and then an amazing sprint finish led out by Ruth Assel. But let's go and see what's going on. We got the men's race coming up next. We're going to go and see
Race
what
2 of the Z Pro
happened
Tri
last
June
week
Invitational
in our
saw the
round 2
triathletes
of
attack
the
a
men's
brutal 16 laps of Crit City. Alistair Brownlee shot straight out of the pens to take an impressive early lead. A couple Olympic gold medals, and he's trying to get a win on the Crit City course. Sanders, Phillips in second, Kunema in third, but it was an unrelenting race with new leaders going off the front over and over and over again. It's Joe Skipper. He used a double draft. Alistair Brownlee with an attack. But after the leg-zapping crit course had spat out a fair few of the world's top triathletes, it all came down to a bunch sprint. Everybody is together, Sean, with 1,000 meters to go. The men jostled for dominance, but standout breakaways from Alistair Brownlee, Joe Skipper, and Braden Curry saw all the riders keeping a breakneck pace to stay with the front group. Braden Curry goes very early, and he is about to get caught at the line. And after all that, it was Mike Phillips, who hadn't made himself known until it counted in the last kilometer of the race, that snatched the win in front of Anthony Costas and James Kunema.
We didn't mention his name all race, and it shows. He was saving it up, really waiting for that final kick, and won it with the lowest amount of average watts per kilogram in the top 3.
Well, there we go. Amazing race last week, and right now, perfect timing. We're going into the men's field as they hit the base of the leg snapper, and we have an amazing field, and certainly putting in a huge effort right now is Aaron Royal at the front of this group with Lionel Sanders on his wheel, trying to separate things, and it looks like they are definitely stringing this field out, the first time up the leg snapper.
Yeah, we see a couple of gaps opening in the back, 1.5 to 2 seconds. They want to close that down ASAP. Lionel Sanders at the front, really pushing the pace, making sure any of those gaps that did open up stay opened, and try to push it through this descent onto the flats.
Yep, there we go. We have Gustav Iden, our 70.3 world champion from last year, taking a pole at the front comfortably over leg snapper the first time. So it looks like it's mostly together, that top 20. They pushed that effort, but it looks like they're hoping to wait to string the group out or separate the group a little bit later down this race. But man, Sean, tell us a little bit that race last week. You know, we got a little caught off guard with that finish.
Yeah, Mike Phillips coming out of nowhere. Bud Racing super smart. We didn't talk about him all race, and I mean it kind of shows why. He just played it perfectly. He took as little poles as possible and was there when it mattered. I think we'll see something similar today, but from a much smaller group, with the leg snapper really breaking things apart. Not so much on the first lap, but like we saw in the women's, I think it's going to be lap after lap. We're going to lose a couple athletes here, a couple athletes there, and especially on this second lap with the sprint point and the only points on the day coming at the secondary sprint point. So we'll see if these athletes really attack that and go for it the second time up leg snapper, and we see this is where they get into the sprint point. So they'll have to be aware, take note of where it is, and watch for the sprint arch on the second time around.
Yeah, very important, Sean, and you could tell that in the women's race, it caught me off guard too. I almost missed it myself because it comes so quickly after that action on leg snapper, but we can see on the side of the road, we've got a couple hundred meters to go till they go under that banner. There we go. Matt Hansen on the front of the group as we go underneath the sprint banner for the first time. Sorry, Matt, no points this go around, but the next time you should be paying attention for sure. Braden Curry is one, Sean, that if it's going to be another Kiwi to win this week, that's my bet. It's going to be Braden Curry.
Yeah, I mean, he took a launch last week with about 200 to 300 to go that I thought might stick. and he had daylight, and it's the pack dynamics just were able to bring him back at the line, and Mike Phillips launched his attack perfectly to just nip him at the line and take the win. So I wouldn't be surprised if if the pack whittles down and he makes a similar attack. We just saw Ruth make a really strong attack in the women's field and just barely get nipped at the line. So I could see Braden doing something similar in the men's field on the finish today.
Yeah, there you go. I think that's smart. And we have Casper Storns on the front. But Sean, we're looking at the top of this group, and it looks like a big group, but we do have athletes off the back already. A chase group with Reed, Russell, Bazone, Brown together about 15 seconds back. Van Berkel and Tim Don have also been dropped early. That leg snapper will get you. I mean, the start of a Zwift race is brutal. You throw a start in and then straight up leg snapper, that's crazy.
Yeah, you really want to be warmed up for any Zwift race because they always start hard, but really having that hard start, first 2 to 3 minutes, but then following up with at the first really strong climb at 5K that you really have to be prepared to go all out for, makes this racing so tough, and they're going to do it 3 more times here today.
There you go. We see Lionel Sanders taking a pole at the front at about 5 watts per kilo. No doubt, Lionel Sanders, his goal for this series was to win the series. And I'm sure in the back of his head, he's thinking, if I'm going to win the series, I'm going to win some stages in the series as well. But he hasn't done that. It hasn't. He's been close, but some other athletes have kind of outclassed him on the sprints. Sean, do you think these next 2 courses are maybe going to appeal to Lionel a little bit better for him to get the points, which are his priority, but also try to win this race?
Yeah, his strategy's been pretty clear from the moment we started Zwift racing. He was going for, or at least this June Invitational series, that he's going for the KOM points, the intermediate sprint points, and he's going to maximize every one of those points and then just try to hold on for the finish and be in the top 5. It's put him at the top of the GC standings or close to it throughout this series. I expect he's going to really go for it on this sprint point and then try to be in the top 5 again and just try to continue just racking up those intermediate points.
Yep, there you go. And right now we saw we got Ben Canute at the front, Casper Storns taking a pull through there. Blumenfeld just took a solid pull. He's one that had some technical issues last week, and we just got word Alistair Brownlee unfortunately had a dropout very early in the race, so he is off the back and he's not going to contest. A surprise so far today, or to this week, Sean, in this series, is Alistair not really shining, as we see Lionel Sanders on the right side of the screen, and no doubt Alistair was looking for it on this week's stage with the terrain that the leg snapper brings, and unfortunate to see him out of the race.
Yeah, it's super unfortunate, but those are things that happen in Zwift racing. Internet dropouts can be spotty, unpredictable, and can really ruin a race. It's really unfortunate that happened to him today, but it can happen to anybody, and it's happened to multiple other athletes throughout this series. So look for him to come back stronger next week up the Alp.
There you go. What we're not seeing on screen, Sean, on the left side of the screen, we got Lionel Sanders there. Everybody else ghosted around him, but we have none other than Kenneth Vanderdrijs off the front, 1.5 seconds, and he's playing with this group, Sean. He is teasing somebody. Come across. Please come across. Who do we think he most would want to come across?
I'd like to see someone like Joe Skipper or Shieldneck get across and really, really make this a race where we have a breakaway. People are pushing it from the front and trying to stay away instead of a big punch like it is right now. But again, one person out front, it's a really hard thing to do in Zwift to stay off the front. I think he's going to get rolled up here pretty soon before we hit the climb.
I think you're right, but I also think it was good timing, and I think he was just opportunistically rolled off the front. And he didn't actually put a lot of effort in when he was out there. I was looking at his watts, and he was 4.5 watts per kilo. Yes, that's a lot of watts, but it's not a big match that he's burned. He's floating out there waiting for somebody to come across. Then if somebody comes across, he's going to burn a big match. But right now we've got the whole group together. Vanderdrijs on the right side of the screen, heart rate 160, definitely up there, but not over the top as far as his effort goes right now. Definitely seems well in control, but he's been an animator every time we've seen him race, Sean, and certainly expect it on a course like this today.
Yeah, he looks very comfortable here, just sitting in the pack, waiting for the next hill and the next attack to happen. Let's see how that plays out. He's been always aggressive in these races so far. I don't expect anything else from him. I think he's going to be constantly on the attack when he sees those opportunities.
Yeah, no, I think you're right. We see Mike Phillips take a turn at the front. It looks like he's added a little bit more facial hair than he had last week on his avatar. Looking good on you, Mike. We got Matt Hansen taking a pole at the front. Anthony Costas, he's one that we haven't seen win any races yet, but he's certainly right at the top of the overall standings. But right now, it looks like Braden Curry, I think when he was learning how to Zwift race, I think maybe he just watched Vanderdrijf's stream, because he seems to have similar tactics. Anytime he feels a lull in the group, he takes a couple hard digs and gets a gap, but he is now back in the middle of that group.
Yeah, and one of the Norwegians on the screen now. We've got the other riders ghosted, so you can see where in the pack he's positioning himself, just nicely towards the front, not in the back. Can cover any moves that are going to happen, but looks pretty smooth right now, pretty controlled. And he's one we haven't talked about a lot in this series. I think he's gotten caught out in a couple split packs early on, and but he's a uber cyclist. He's won races from the front in WTS races, which is always incredibly hard to do. So this course will suit him, and he's got a lot of power and a lot of high power for short sprints. So we'll watch for him to be in contention all the way through.
Yeah, no, I think that's a great point. He's one that has the ability to put out those top efforts, and certainly is in the mix today. And he's got some compatriots. The rest of the Norwegian squad is still in the front of this group, with Gustav Iden, as I said earlier, defending 70.3 world champion, and Christian Blumenfeld, who certainly has the ability to do well in these races. Another ITU athlete that transferred over to non-drafting has had huge success, but right now on screen, doesn't get much better than the results Henry Schumann has had at the Olympics. Only the Brownlees bettered him for that bronze medal. Amazing performance out of Henry, and today he's doing a great job sitting in the group comfortably as he kind of learns the ropes in Zwift racing, Sean.
Yeah, relatively new to the sport. He just got a smart trainer before the June series, so able to get it in time and participate here. But yeah, bronze medalist in Rio. Rio was a really tough course, had a really steep, punchy hill. He accelerated on that course. He also joined the recce ride yesterday, and we talked about going up and down this hill, so he knows exactly how long it is, where he needs to be positioned, and how to ride up over the hill and stay connected before the descent starts.
There you go. Definitely a pro, making sure he does the recce and gets as much knowledge out of our kind of in-house Zwift pro, Sean Jefferson, out on those recce rides. So great performance by Henry, and we'll see. I do think he has that kind of that lighter build and that watts per kilo to be able to get over the leg snapper well each time if he's feeling good, but also have a great sprint at the end. Right now, Gustav Iden at about 5 watts per kilo as he pulls through the front. It looks like this group of 20 is pretty comfortable. They're looking at each other, and nobody wants to do too much work before we hit the leg snapper.
Yeah, and they just come off this little bridge here, and we'll start to get onto the foot. You see 3-4%. It'll quickly get up to 8%, and here we got Ben Canute really taking a big pull here and dig deep for this second time up. He knows he's got to stay connected, because once we come off this climb on the descent, the sprint comes up very quickly.
Yeah, it sure does. And I almost think Mike Phillips is trolling Ben Canute with his avatar, because his avatar is a spitting image of Ben Canute on the right side of our screen. But somebody's going for a little bit of a gap, and it's Joe Skipper. Definitely one that you better not be caught sleeping if Joe's in your group. So now he has a second. He's at 9.2 watts per kilo. Everybody in the top 20 is in the orange right now with their watts. That's nuts as they go over leg snapper, and it is blowing apart a little bit. Everybody's within 3 seconds, so they're all right about there. But these little second gaps, as you said, Sean, can be really, really hard to close and almost impossible to close. But right now, Joe Skipper, a second and a half on the rest of this group.
Yeah, and it looks like he's sat up a little, 2.5 watts per kilogram towards the front. He's gonna get pulled back. But very quickly, it's going to be positioning yourself for the sprint. Anybody who's got the legs, once they hit the flat part in the next couple hundred meters, will be gearing up, positioning themselves, and really looking for those intermediate sprint points. Look for Lionel to be in the best position to take that sprint.
Yeah, and Joe, with as many attacks as he's done, he knows that he can recover well pretty quickly after a hard effort like that, and I think he was maybe hoping to catch some other athletes off guard to get dropped from this main group. That hasn't happened yet, so Joe Skipper hanging on the back of this group. He's still doing a lot of work trying to close that gap to get back to the front before they hit this sprint, and a little bit of room there in between those wheels as Joe Skipper comes around the athlete in front trying to get up to that group again.
Yeah, now that it's flattening out, it looks like they're going to pull back, but I think that was Reese Barclay dangling off the back. He needs to close this down and make sure he's well connected, because they will very quickly go into this sprint point, and again will be another attack. And if you're already off the back then, when these athletes start sprinting, it's very hard to close that down.
No, incredibly hard. And now we see a bunch of aero power-ups getting used as there are 200 to go into the sprint. It looks like it's Ben Canute in a great position. James Kunema needs those points. He's going for it, but Lionel Sanders is there as well. Jackson Laundry is in the front. I think Lionel Sanders got his wheel right in front of Jackson Laundry as they went over with Anthony Costas as well. Let's see what these results were, Sean.
Yeah, very close between Laundry, Kunema, and Sanders. Hard to pull who was ahead. It looked like it was either Sanders or Laundry, but we're going to have to wait for the official results to come up to see who took those intermediate sprint points.
But Sean, there's gaps right now. And if these athletes, if Costas, and here we go right now, we had Costas going to the front, Storms, going to the front, because there's an opportunity to split this group now, right after the sprint. It's 1.5 seconds gap to athletes of Braden Curry, Mike Phillips, Christian Blumenfeld, 3 seconds to Hansen and McNamee and Gustav Iden off the back of this group. So these athletes all using that double draft right away, trying to recover a little bit while this pace is still up. Let's see if they push and try to kind of put the nail in the coffin on this chase group that includes Christian Blumenfeld, Matt Hansen, and Gustav Iden.
Yeah, perfect time to use that double draft. I mean, we just went over leg snapper, very short descent right into a sprint. So the last 3 minutes have been very, very difficult, super high power. They're loving that they've got the double draft for this 30 seconds. And it looks like it was Lionel Sanders, Kunema, and Laundry, Costas, and Canute with points at the intermediate sprint. Again, Lionel times it perfectly. We know his tactics, and a lot of the other riders know his tactics. They just can't do anything about it.
No, yeah, I think that's perfectly said, Sean. Ben Canute really wanted some points there, and he got them with 1 point coming across in 5th position. Jackson Laundry, kind of a sleeper. He's slowly accruing more and more points, and it seems like he takes his Zwift racing pretty seriously, and he's been learning and definitely putting a bunch of effort into it. And good on Jackson. He's one of those names that we maybe isn't as well recognized as some of the others, but he's starting to rack up those points.
Yeah, and I keep to be like repeating myself today, but he again was on the recce ride yesterday, so we talked about the climb and where the sprint point came, and he was ready for it. He knew the course, knew what it was going to take to get up and over the climb, down the descent, and then prepare for the finish. Or for that, at least that intermediate sprint. And yeah, great on him, doing his homework and being prepared and ready to go. And here we go, James Kunema on screen, just settling nicely into the front of this pack and getting a drink. Working hard, working well, and going to conserve before we go up for the 3rd time on leg snapper in the next few minutes.
There you go. It was a pleasure talking to James last week about his performances in the series to date, and he just loves his Zwift racing, partly because he gets a little break. He takes control. He's got 3 kids under 2 years old, and he does all his work, making sure dinner's ready. We're helping him get to bed, and he looks over to see if his wife Jody gives him the nod and if it's okay to get on the bike, and he runs and does these races with us. So awesome to see that father having great performances here, and he got some more points on that sprint, Sean.
Yeah, it's great to see some of these athletes that with the lockdown and not a lot of races on the calendar really get excited about competition and competing against their fellow triathletes, and then using Zwift as the platform to do it. Like we said, you've got the 30 of the best triathletes in the world competing week on week, and it's giving these athletes something to train for, something to gear up for each week, and really keep the dedication and determination moving forward week to week.
Yeah, there we go. And we've got this front group all together. We did have some drops. It did look like that effort was a little bit too much for Joe Skipper. He got popped out of the back, kind of dropped himself out with that effort, but well-timed and well executed. Just everybody else was too strong to bring him across and drop him going into that downhill. Appleton is off the back. Reese Barclay, unfortunately, he's been having great success, good points. He is out the back, so he's going to lose a lot of points today. Pizzone, Reed, and Brown all off the back as well, but still in that front group with Johnny Brownlee and David McNamee, with Blumenfeld also in this group.
Yeah, and we had a good look at Aaron Royal and his setup. It looked like he pulled his trainer outside to be in the morning air. Yes, that was not nighttime. He is up before the sun has even come up to do this series, being in Australia. So good on him, getting up super early, throwing his trainer outside to make sure he's got a little airflow and racing and riding hard today.
Yep, absolutely. And there's Anthony Costas on screen looking super comfortable, and he's one that has had great performances. It seems like he can do well anywhere, but I do think this race and next week race is going to be very good for Anthony. He's great on climbs. A sustained climb up Alpe Zwift is going to be awesome, but also this climb up Leg Snapper is a great one for him. And we've heard on the YouTube comments, yes, the drinking game is on. If you drink a cup of whole milk every time I say Leg Snapper, I will give you a gallon of whole milk.
We may go through a few gallons here today with the amount of times we're going to say it, but it is the highlight of this course and the thing that animates the race every time up. And if you're not familiar with this climb, jump into a Zwift race. There's Zwift races throughout the week. Find one with Innsbruck Ring Circuit and see how hard the racers go up Leg Snapper. It's literally all out every time you go up that hill, and then you just hang on for dear life over the top. So very interesting, very hard work, and great to see these guys get ready for it every week, and especially here today, that max effort definitely hurting them every time on the course.
Oh, absolutely. It's brutal. And, that effort is going to crush you, but then with that sprint after that effort, it's just unrelenting, and certainly is going to take a good warm-up as well as some talent and some good power in your legs to be able to do well on this course, as we see Aaron Royal taking a pole at the front of this group, just 2.5 watts per kilo, so he's just kind of letting momentum get himself to the front of the group, and he's flicking that elbow, having others come around. So a little bit of a lull in the action, but I do see a little watt spike from Van der Drijs. Looks like he's putting himself in position. Let's see if he makes another move off the front of this group.
Yeah, I mean, you'd expect a little bit of a lull. All these athletes are trying to regroup, get their heart rates down after that second time up Leg Snapper, right into a sprint point. So the third lap will be probably, at least until the next climb, a little quiet. Nobody making any moves yet, but someone like Braden Curry or Van der Drijs might want to jump a little earlier, see if they can get somebody away on this next climb, and try to push it towards the finish so it's not a group of 20 coming into the final sprint again.
Yeah, no, I think that's a good point. Braden Curry on screen right now, like a little bit low RPMs, super strong and powerful athlete. Again, he's one, Sean, that has so much strength over so many different disciplines in endurance racing in general, being an endurance racer, kind of an Xterra racer, as well as short course racing and long course Ironman distance racing as well. And he has a lot of talent, but he works even harder than the talent he was given. So Braden Curry has showed us a lot this last 2 weeks in this series, and certainly a course here today that suits him well for kind of his dynamic riding styles. We see David McNamee taking a pole at the front of this course with Gustav Iden on his wheel, and then Lionel Sanders.
Yeah, and you could see the amount of effort these athletes put into this race. He was steaming up his entire living room. He had condensation on his sliding glass doors. He is putting out tremendous amount of power through this race and really heating up his entire apartment or house. I would like to see that door open and get some air coming in while he's racing here.
Yeah, there you go. I think that's a good call. Real early in the morning for him. There we have Lionel Sanders taking a hard pull as well. We saw Ronnie Schildneck. He's one that is continuing to do well in this series. I think these climbs, technically kind of a bigger rider, you might expect him to struggle, but I think a leg snapper climb, he can handle pretty well. I think next week it might be a little bit more of a challenge for Ronnie, but look how smooth he is. Oh, he's got the full entourage. He's got the towel. He's got a fan, no doubt. He's got someone with his hands in his pockets, just casually watching. So definitely getting some good support from Ronnie. No doubt they're going to be yelling at him in a few seconds here when the action hots up, going up leg snapper for another time.
Yeah, and we got a lot of the strong riders, kind of Philip Graves, Phillips still in this pack. They've been, we've seen them come to the front when it counts in the sprints. Some of the ITU athletes might want to shake a few of them and not let it come down to a pack of 20 for the sprint. And here we go. They're starting to go up leg snapper. A lot of the featherweights being deployed right at the front. Casper Storms, ITU rider, really pushing the pace to start this climb.
Yeah, here we go. The front, we got Henry Skoman at the front at 9 watts per kilo, trying to break this group apart with Vanderdrijs. No doubt he's going to be opportunistic over the top of this climb if he can, if he feels a little bit of a lull in the action. Ben Canute pushing himself at the front of this group, as well as Philip Graves, James Kunema up there, as well as Costas and Royal. Schildek is right in there as well. Gapping a little bit, Matt Hansen is 3 seconds off the back of this group. He's going to have to work hard. David McNamee's a little bit off the back, as well as Gustav Iden and Blumenfeld. I think they're close enough, Sean, to get back on, but they're going to have to work to do it.
Yeah, it did look like they were just close enough. We'll see if they actually do. Matt Hansen looks like he may have got caught out there. 5-second gap looks like right now. David McNamee at 1.5 seconds. He has a shot at getting on. Matt Hansen's going to have to dig real deep to bring this back. But yeah, we see those gaps every time. We see athletes get a little further back on leg snapper. It's just a matter of time before it actually cracks.
Yeah, I mean, it's just that hard. It's not like it's a tactical error. It's just when you've got the best athletes on the planet going as hard as they can for those few hundred meters of steep climbing, it's really hard to keep up, it turns out. And Matt Hansen has had to relent, and he is now 6 seconds back, and he's pushing 6 watts per kilo, but it's going to be pretty much impossible for him to bring this group of 19 athletes back on Matt Hansen on the right side of our screen. He's working hard. He has not given up. That's one thing we love about Matt Hansen is he's got a lot of fight in him, and as hard as he tries, sorry, Matt, it's going to be really hard, but I know you're going to try until you absolutely can't anymore. Great performance by Matt Hansen.
Yeah, he's really pushing to try to maintain that gap by yourself. In a group of 19, he's going to continue to go out the back, and it's going to be, unless he can throw down like 8 or 9 watt per kilogram effort for 15 to 20 seconds, he's going to continue to lose time, and we'll see him next week.
Yeah, absolutely. And he's an athlete that's very good at long time trial efforts, obviously being an Ironman distance athlete. Sean, next week we've got the Alpe de Zwift as kind of our finale with more points for the top 8 across the finish of the Alpe de Zwift. Matt could certainly do well, but who are you looking at to maybe jump up in the GC standings or really put a stamp of authority on the GC standings for next week's race?
Yeah, I think Lionel's going to attack the Alpe. He's done it a number of times. Look for athletes like the Brownlees to always be up there. Henry Schumann probably will be up there. I think all these athletes that really like climbing are going to make a big impact next week and really see really shake up the GC standings.
Yeah, absolutely, and that is a race where, tactics are one thing, but it's always cool to see a series come down to who is just the strongest athlete. And sure, tactics will be somewhat important on Alpe de Zwift, but I think it's going to come down to who has the best legs on the day and who has that highest threshold and is able to push it and kind of push through the pain. I mean, it's almost going to be a suffering contest next week, Sean.
Yeah, of course. It kind of takes away the power-ups and the tactical aspects of Zwift racing and getting on wheels. It's really just going to be who's got the most power for 40 minutes up the Alpe.
And here we go. We're going under the banner for what will be in a couple laps the finish. Sean, for those that are just joining us, 10K to go. I'm a little bit surprised how big of a group we still have together, almost 20 athletes together in this men's field. Where the women's field, they always show the men how it's done, and it's split up a little bit more in that race, the first 2 laps, where I think the men are maybe looking at each other more, maybe waiting for the last lap, or are people happy to have a sprint finish at the end of this one, Sean?
It looks that way. There's nobody who's been making, like Van der Dries has been attacking in all the other races. He seems to be a little quiet here. He had one little dig at the beginning of the race, but I think the way this course is laid out, with leg snapper being kind of right in the middle of a lap and it being so hard, it's really difficult to come off of that climb and then have anything left to make an attack halfway through the race. So I think just this course alone lets you, once that athletes want to come off the climb and recover, no matter who you are, because it's been so hard up that hill. So we see a lot of recovery here, 4.6, 3.4 watts per kilogram, really regrouping and really saving it for the final lap.
Yeah, absolutely. Right now on screen, Gustav Iden, he was a shock to a lot of the world for winning the 70.3 World Championships last year. The only one that wasn't shocked was Gustav Iden. He knew he was going to do it. He thought he had a pretty good chance, but he upset the world, so to speak. He's one that looks super comfortable in this group, Sean, and I think that's the thing, right? Like, this tactic of everybody kind of looking at each other can favor certain athletes that normally would struggle if it was, high, more of a threshold contest. So who do you think right now, I mean, in my mind, not that he doesn't have a high threshold, but kind of has been hidden so far, like a Johnny Brownlee? We haven't seen much out of him yet today. Philip Graves, we haven't seen much out of him with 8.5 kilometers to go. Who do you think, the way the tactics have kind of played out so far today, who do you think has the best chance of maybe capitalizing on those tactics?
We might see Mike Phillips come and surprise us again. He did it last week. We barely talked about him all race. We haven't really talked about him here other than his performance from last week. So definitely something to watch out for. Him being quiet, making the move at the right time. He's been able to cover all these moves up leg snapper. And, Philip Graves, again, another really strong cyclist, would be great at sprinting. And always James Cunnama, he's been there over the last 2 weeks, and watch out for him too.
Yeah, I think that's a great call. Philip Graves would be a great call as well. Super, super strong athlete, has experience over the ITU distance as well as the Ironman. It seems like he's got some good music on as well. I wish we had an audio. He's either talking to a buddy or singing along to his favorite track, but he's definitely active. Philip Graves looking to have a good result here today. But yeah, Phillips, he's hiding. And talking to him last week, Sean, he said, the next 2 weeks, that's for the light guys. That's not for the power rider. I'm going to give up. It's not where I'm going to shine. But he's shown that he has the ability to go hard for 90 seconds, 60 seconds, and recover and go again. And the fact that he's still in this group, Sean, with 1 lap to go, I think he is in a great position to kind of, we can't really call it an upset again because he won last week, but I think he's in a good position to win again.
And what's also surprising is Matt Hansen in 20th position is clawing back into this pack. 3 seconds back now. He's going to have a chance to probably get on before the next climb, as long as there's not a big jump. But Hansen clawing back in. He was up to 10 seconds back, and he's now narrowed it down to 2 seconds. So very impressive riding by him. He never gave up. Heart rate at 183, while the rest are sitting under 150. So he's definitely sacrificed some effort to get there.
Did I tell you, Sean, he had a heart of a lion, and I think he probably heard me say he didn't have a chance. Thanks for trying, and took another little dig out of spite. You will find spite being a very good motivator at times, and Matt Hansen is officially back on this group, and we say it all the time, Sean, if you get dropped, you're done, and Matt Hansen absolutely just proved us wrong. Amazing.
Yeah, incredible effort there to get back. I think he's going to be hurting on the next climb, but hey, he's got a couple K here to really try to rest, settle in, give it one last big effort up the climb, and see if he can get over the top with this group.
Yeah, I mean, that's the performance of the day, no matter what happens. To me, as far as I'm concerned, is Matt Hansen getting back to the group. But right now, David McNamee using it, maybe it's that a burrito I think he used to get a little bit of a gap. He's got a second, and he put 8.4 watts per kilo down to get his gap. It's now 1.5 seconds, so he's putting in a very, very big turn at the front, Sean, a big attack. 2 seconds now, trolling again the front of this race to see with 6.3 kilometers to go if he can get someone to jump across and kind of join forces and get that gap. But right now, Sean, it's 4 seconds.
Yeah, it looks like they're looking at each other. Braden Curry is maybe making a jump right now, so he's trying to jump across that gap and join him. But the others were just looking at each other, and guess who is in third, trying to make a move up as well?
Yeah, that's Vanderdrijs for sure. No doubt. We expected that. But Braden Curry is eating into this, and the most important part is that he's got a gap on the rest of the field. Oftentimes when you're trying to bridge across to someone on a breakaway, you bring the whole field with you, but Braden knows the game, and he did a hard jump, about 10 watts per kilo, got a gap, and Sean, he's 2 seconds behind. McNamee no doubt sees that. He's going to take a couple, not soft pedal strokes, but ease up a little bit, recover, and then these two athletes have a very, very good shot if they get together, Sean.
Yeah, this is a great race tactic for these two. Braden Curry saw an opportunity. He jumped across to take it. The others are now looking at themselves, saying who's going to go, who's going to push it, who's going to close it down. And it looks like nobody's really taking it on.
No.
There's somebody goes to the front, but then they don't want to jump. And right now they're sitting at 2.2 watts per kilogram at the front of that pack. So this group might go away, gain some time, and we'll see if they can close it down on the leg snapper.
Yeah, absolutely. But here's the problem. Dave McNamee, he spent a lot of effort, and I think maybe a little bit too much because he's having a hard time holding on to the wheel of Braden Curry as Braden Curry actually slows down to 4 watts per kilo he's absolutely letting McNamee back on his wheel. They have 10 seconds. He knows that he's going to have a much, much better chance if he has somebody to ride with, and David put that big effort in. Braden, the last thing you want when you bridge up to somebody is to then be left alone. You want that person with you. And smart racing by Braden Curry to really get off the gas, go down to 4 watts per kilo. Now they're taking solid pulls at 5.5 watts per kilo, 6 watts per kilo. And Sean, it's settled at 10 seconds with 5K to go. And yes, 10 seconds could absolutely just get eliminated on leg snapper depending who pushes that effort. But Braden Curry is one of those athletes that could also then jump again once you hit leg snapper. So 11 seconds, these two athletes, this is something real.
Yeah, you definitely want to see McNamee and Curry trade off, go 2 up here, trade pulls, really get as much time as they can before leg snapper, because it looks like the rest of the athletes are really just waiting for that climb, and no one's going to make a move until they hit that climb. And I think the pack is literally going to blow to 100 pieces once they start that climb, because they're going to be really driving to catch Curry and McNamee, who are now 12 seconds off the front.
Oh, this is a brilliant move, and again, just textbook from Braden Curry, and it didn't go as he necessarily planned when he got up to David, but he reevaluated, made sure David could get with him, and now they've got 13 seconds, and you know who's kicking himself is Vanderdrijs. It's just like, come on, I've been waiting for that all race, and he missed that move. Sean, 15 seconds now with 4K to go. These guys have a very, very good shot, and I do think you're right. I think that chase group is just looking at each other, wondering who's going to put the effort in. And I'm curious if we're going to have maybe those Norwegians send somebody to the front to bring it back so somebody has a chance of winning this race.
Yeah, and we're definitely seeing Braden Curry and McNamee go up at a much steadier effort, 5.5 to 5.3 watts per kilogram, where the second pack is hitting 10, 9, 8 watts per kilogram. A plethora of featherweights getting launched right now. They're all really attacking, and some athletes going towards the back. Johnny Brownlee needs to be careful here because he will easily get left off this pack if he doesn't move up towards the center, and gaps are already opening.
Yeah, they are. They're opening, but they're also closing, Sean. Everybody's using those featherweights, and they're bridging up so quickly to these two athletes off the front, and the gap is gone. So they've gone right past. Casper Storns is at the front. Philip Graves is there as well, pushing 8 watts per kilo. There's gaps about 6 athletes down. It really starts to open up there. These athletes need to push over the top of this climb. 3.5K to go, Sean, and the group is getting blown apart. It looks like Johnny Brownlee is off the back. Not too surprisingly, Matt Hansen, kind of our hero of the day, is now off the back of this group as well. Costas has a little bit of a gap. That's big. That's really big that Costas has a gap. But at the front, Braden Curry, right back to it, Sean. He knows these athletes are trying to recover, and he's right back to the front, pushing big watts, trying to make sure this split stays.
Yeah, we said they weren't pushing as hard as we would have expected going up leg snapper boat. That's McNamee and Curry, but maybe his plan was to just save that last lap, not make it as hard up the hill, and really make an attack once we got down the bottom and really continue to push the pace while the others suffer. But yeah, we've whittled the pack down to 17. Looks like Hansen is lost, Brownlee has been lost, Gustav Eden 6 seconds back, McNamee 6 seconds back, so we're down to 16. riders now, and it looks like these 16 will go to the finish.
Yeah, there we go. Braden Curry again with a tiny little gap, just 0.3 seconds, but he's not afraid to push into the win on his own, but he's going to settle in. If he's a smart man, there he goes, right, settling into the middle of this group, 2.3 kilometers to go. Matty Troutman takes a dig at the front of this race. We saw Aaron Royal kind of roll through this group, and Braden Curry right back to the front. He wants to make sure he's in good position, but he's definitely spending a lot of time pushing some wind at the front of this course. But Sean, yeah, as you said, we now have, it looks like about 15, 16 athletes altogether. McNamee is now off the back after that strong move as they go under the sprint banner. No implications with this sprint on the last lap, but it does say we've got 2K to go. Sean, with 2K to go, who do you think is in the best position to unload this sprint? I already know your answer.
Actually, I'm gonna switch my answer.
Oh.
I'm gonna go with Mike Phillips again. He's been quiet all race. We saw him be quiet last week, and we saw him pull out an upset. He's been in the top 3 in the last few races over a sprint, and I'd like to see him do it again.
Sean, I'm going to have to cut you off, but Christian Blumenfeld uses a ghost to get a little bit of a gap with 1.5K to go. He's an athlete that has the legs to make something like this stick. 1.6 seconds, so it's opening up a little bit. The athletes behind him are kind of watching each other. 2 seconds now. I think if you let Blumenfeld get 4 seconds with this little of race remaining, I think you're going to have a lot of trouble bringing him back. It's 2.5 seconds, and with this close to the finish, Sean, it's kind of every man for himself, so nobody wants to go to the front and pull this move back, and certainly the Norwegians aren't going to help pull this back. So now 3 seconds with 1.1K to go is Christian Blumenfeld, goes under the Flamme Rouge all on his own. Sean, can he do it?
Yeah, it's definitely not a time for these athletes in the second pack or chasing him to look at each other. They just need to go and try to close this down. We've seen Henry Schumann and Ben Canute go to the front. Lionel's going to want him push this up, but 3 seconds, almost 4 seconds with under a K to go. This might stick, and like you said, the Norwegians will likely not take a pull through.
Okay, and it's going to start ramping up in the back group. I saw some orange numbers coming of Anthony Costas. He's trying to jump away with 700 meters to go. Anthony Costas at 10 watts per kilo, 12 watts per kilo now, trying to jump across with Braden Curry. They're now at 3.3 seconds. 3 seconds now is we got Costas now coming across to Blumenfeld. I think he's going to make this bridge, and he's going to do it on his own. He's dropped Lionel Stanners and James Cunema, so this is a long move with 400 meters to go. There's going to be a group sprint behind. Now Anthony Costas has found himself on a lone breakaway with a group sprint coming into finish now with Mike Phillips putting in the big watts, 200 meters to go. Mike Phillips, he's one that we know has a great sprint. He uses his aero power up maybe a little bit too early. We got Phillips going around, Costas coming through. Sepp Odin is going through as well, coming across the finish line. I think it's possible that we had Jackson Laundry last second come across at 10 watts per kilo just in front of Odin. We will see the official results, but I think it's the dark horse from Canada. It's Jackson Laundry with a full upset. Huge watts per kilo on the day, but man, he is there. There's fist pumping and high fives going on in his room right now. Full upset, Jackson Laundry. He's worked so hard at it, and amazing performance, super well timed, had great patience as those moves early from Blumenfeld, and then Costas trying to go across. He just followed wheels and timed it to perfection, just getting the win over Sepp Odin, James Cunema from Aaron Royal, and Mike Phillips rounding out the top 5. Sean, Jackson Laundry, we didn't pick him.
No, we didn't talk about him all day. Similar to last week with Phillips coming out of nowhere, Laundry comes out of nowhere, takes the win over Sepp Odin and James Cunema. Cunema really strong again across the finish. Someone we thought would be up there, pulls up to third. Aaron Royal, nice to see him out in the early morning, getting into fourth. But yeah, Jackson Laundry, unsuspecting, someone we didn't pick, and someone we might have to start picking in these sprint finish races.
Yeah, unfortunately, we don't get to pick him for the series next week. No sprint, but he's certainly he'd be worth the pick, no doubt. But amazing upset from Jackson Laundry, to just timed to perfection. And I think that today both races absolutely timed to perfection. But James Cunema getting a 2-point advantage on Lionel Sanders to move back up. And I think it's worth pointing out, Sean, that the way these points work, we'd have Costas isn't in the top 3. So some of those athletes did not get big points, and Jackson Laundrie got a lot of points, so that's actually going to be an advantage to some of those athletes like a James Cunnama who dipped down a little bit after Phillips stole a bunch of points next week. So I think we're going to have Sanders is still, I believe, going to be in the lead of this series after we tally up these points, but James Cunnama is going to move himself into a little bit more of a comfortable position, I think.
Yeah, Costas really fading there in that last 100 meters, going from 1st to 14th pretty quickly, and that's going to be pretty deadly. I mean, it's going to put him on a little bit of a disadvantage, but on the GC standings. But as we go into next week, and there's the replay, hard to see from that position where Laundrie came from. He just, the last 20 meters just made a nice move, was in the draft, came around and just took it right at the end, and actually took it by a little bit of advantage there.
Yeah, no, it's crazy, and he surfed wheels, and I mean it was he played a game of patience, and on the alternate, it was Costas was, I think, maybe got too excited. He's very good at timing his sprint, but I think he thought that Blumenfeld really threw a wrench in there. I think everybody thought he was strong enough to stay away, so even though it looks like it might be a field sprint, let's not let him go, and let's bring it back. And it was the guys that did the work to bring him back that got spit out the back. And amazingly timed performance by Jackson Laundrie, and no doubt he's on cloud nine, taking the best athletes in professional triathlon and putting them on his rear wheel in a sprint finish in the Innsbruck ring course. Awesome points. So here we go. We got the series points. Now Lionel Sanders still a commanding lead at 105 over James Cunnama's 94 points. Mike Phillips at 89 and Costas at 85. Aaron Royal moves into a good position at 76 points. And I think, Mike Phillips, he said he's maybe not so good at the big climb, so I think we might overlook him, going into the big climb next week. So Costas is now 9 points behind Cunnama, and Sanders separated at about 10 points each for that series final. And it's going to be a lot of work for Cunnama to take this race away from Lionel Sanders.
Yeah, that's gonna be the battle next week, is seeing the Sanders Cunnama battle for the GC, and here we are straight into the women's points with Teresa Adams with a fairly commanding lead so far.
Yeah, no, we wouldn't have bet on an athlete sweeping, and I will say, Sean, I did pick Teresa for the GC in this series, but she has just absolutely dominated, and even though we've said Jocelyn McCauley has been kind of a surprise and had amazing races, she's still 15 points back, and then a further 2 points to Lucy Charles Barkley. And no doubt Lucy Charles Barkley is going to go all in for the win next week. That's how she races, and she races very well when she goes up big climbs like that, but it's going to be a lot for her. I would say it's probably insurmountable unless Teresa Adams has some real issues out there next week. But Teresa Adams looks like she's kind of got it in the bag at 109 points with a 15-point lead over second and 17 points over third place Lucy Charles Barkley.
Yeah, and just look at those names on the top of the leaderboard, the best triathletes in the world here on the Z Pro Series, racing week in and week out, and it comes down to the final race up the Alp next week. Super excited about that one. It's going to be a fireworks show, and we'll see everyone next week.
Yeah, it's going to be awesome. Thanks so much for tuning in. For Sean Jefferson, I'm Matt Lieto, and until next time, ride on.